Hi everyone, welcome, and in this video what I'll be showing you is how to make a energy sphere between the hands of Ryu. So basically what I'm saying is we'll be working on a Hadouken, and this will all kind of be within Blender. I'll show you how to make some nice shader materials, and it'll just kind of be used for simple objects, but the materials themselves will be a little bit complex. So let's just begin. And before we begin, let me just kind of introduce to you what we have here in the scene. So here we have Ryu in a pose, kind of holding the Hadouken so that he can kind of charge it to shoot. So we'll be seeing a bit of wind effects for this tutorial, a little bit of electricity, and a lot of emission. And the emission will kind of glow up the scene and kind of make it really exaggerated, but in a really cool way. So now that you've kind of seen what this scene looks like, let me show you what it looks like rendered. This might take a second. There we go. And so from here you can see it's very dramatic. The lighting's very, well, not hard, but it's definitely dramatic. And with the work we'll be doing, it'll only push that dramatic effect even further. So let's just go back to the material preview and let's get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over to the Outlook, and this whole collection right here, I'm going to just go ahead and close that, or not close it, collapse it. I'm going to go to Filter and turn on Selectable so that now I can turn off selection of everything in that collection, meaning everything right here. So can't select anything, can't do anything about it. And that's kind of what I want to do so I can focus on the actual modeling and making of the Hadouken. So to get started, let's go to Add. And let's go to Mesh, UV Sphere. All right. And with that, let's go ahead and bring that up. Oh, I see. The UV sphere is actually in the collection. There we go. Now it's not. Now I can select it and bring it into 3D space. There we go. I think that looks pretty good right there in the middle. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So let's start with that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the sphere, right click, shade smooth. And while we're at it, let me make a new collection. So up here, I'm going to go to new collection, rename this Hadouken. There we go. And I'll just put the sphere inside. So I'll rename this Hadouken underscore inner, like so, just so I can kind of keep everything organized. And we'll give this a new material. So let's go ahead and bring this up so we kind of see less of the outlook and more of the properties. And we're going to make a new material for the selected sphere. There we go. We're going to name this Hadouken underscore inner underscore MAT. MAT for me just kind of stands for material. And it's just good to differentiate between all your parts. So this one texture being distinct from the actual mesh, that way you're not confused. Now, for this part, what we're going to do is change the surface. So right now it's principled BSDF. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, switch it to emission, because we don't really need anything else. I'm going to go ahead and turn the color to something like a blue, like so, around there, should be good. We'll increase the strength to 10. And that way we'll kind of move from there. Go over to the render properties. And for the purpose of this part right here, where we're just kind of previewing the materials, I'm going to switch the render engine to Eevee, increase the viewport to 64 samples, turn on ambient occlusion and bloom, and screen space reflections. And now already you can tell when clicking on and off bloom, right now it's white, and then with bloom, you see a little tint of blue. And that's what we're going for with the inner part of the Hadouken. So with that ready, this is all pretty good. So we can kind of move on to the next part. So there you go. You already made 1/3 of the Hadouken, and we're already getting pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this sphere, scale it out, and this will be the outer shell of the Hadouken. Let's put it around, let's say that size. I'm gonna come over to the outliner, and change the naming to Hadouken Outer. And then for the material, I'm going to make an entirely new material and rename this Hadouken Outer _MAT. There we go. In this one, we're also going to change the surface, but we'll actually go into the shader work tab to use the shading editor to actually make our own custom texture. So to get started with this, what we'll do first is just kind of delete this one that we have right here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that and press X to delete. And we'll be adding some shaders. So I'm going to press Shift A, go to Shader, Mix Shader, and then just plug that in. From there, we're going to go to add another shader, and this one will be transparent. Plug that into the first one. We'll make another shader, and this will be the last one. There we go. And make this one emission. There we are. I'm going to do the same thing like I did with the inner Hadouken and give this a tint, but I'm going to go all the way to the edge of the circle. And then with that, I'll change the emission to 50 so we can get a good idea of what this will look like. So with all that, before I move on, let's go over to the settings of the material properties right here. And let's change the blend mode from opaque to alpha blend. That way we can actually see the inside of this transparent object, and we'll be able to see the texture inside and out, more or less. So to get started here, let's go ahead and just begin adding a texture, more or less. So we're going to go to Shift A, Texture, and we're going to go to Voronoi Texture. And we'll change the 3D to 4D, and then kind of leave all of this as it is with the first part. I'm going to duplicate this one, bring it right below, and switch the F1 to Smooth F1. That way it's a little bit different, and it'll make more sense as we go along. I'll go ahead and add a math node, Shift A, and this will be Converter, Math. There we go. And I'll select the distance on both for the values right here to plug in. And then we'll go ahead and just plug it into the factor of the mix shader. So already you can see there's something happening, and you kind of see some detail going on in there. So that's good. Now we can make it a little bit more interesting. I'll go over to the first one of the Voronoi textures, and I'm going to press Control T. So if you don't know what that is, it's basically a shortcut with a add-on that comes with Blender called Node Wrangler. If you want to access it, come over here to Edit, Preferences, and then in the add-ons, come over to the search bar right here and just type in Node. As soon as you do that, let me bring it in the middle, you can see a couple of presets or add-ons that comes with Blender, and one of them is Node Wrangler. So go ahead and turn that on. And then let me just kind of delete this to show you again. Once it's on, just select the texture and press Control T. And there you go. So this will kind of be the detail that we want for both textures. So I'll just plug this in. And in a few more minutes, I'll show you some extra details we can use. But for right now, I'll just kind of leave this as it is. And we'll go ahead and add a value for the scaling of the mapping. So I'm going to go to input, value, plug that in, and I'll bring this to 1 for now. I'm going to change the texture coordinates right here from generated to object. So that way, what it's essentially saying is the texture is kind of dependent on the object here instead of it just being generated as its own thing, if that makes sense. But don't think about it too much. It's a little detail that will just help make more detailing on the sphere. So from here, what I want to do is I want to copy this value, bring it around here, and this will be the value for W up here and W down here, like so. I'm going to duplicate this again, get it around right up below, change the value for the scale down here, and the same up here. For this scaling of W, I'll bring it down to let's say 0.5. And then the scaling, let's just bring it down a little bit less, so 0.7. There we go. And you might not be seeing much, but there's some work happening right around there. It'll make more sense as we go along. So, with all that there, I'm going to go ahead and add a bit more detail up here in the front. I'll move this back a little bit. We're going to add a color ramp. So I'm going to go to Shift A, Converter, Color Ramp. There we go. And I'll make sure that I kind of put it inside this line right here to where it highlights. So there we go. It kind of keys it in for me, or snaps it in. So with this color ramp, I'm going to bring the black bar a little bit in front of the left side of the minus symbol, and the white tab, I'm going to bring it a little bit more to the left side of the arrow right here. And I'll leave that kind of around there as it is. Now, for this math symbol right here, we had it at add, but I want to switch it to subtract. And as you can see, we're already getting some nice detailing here with the textures that we've been using, which is the Voronoi and the Voronoi. If we, let's say, come back here to the texture coordinate and switch to generated, it creates a different texture. So switch it back to object, and there you can see it definitely looks a little bit better because it's kind of, again, texturing based off the object, like I had said previously. Just so you can see kind of a different example. Oh, I accidentally moved away from the screen. And then if you want to, you can come over here to the drop downs like here, switch it to Manhattan, or the other textures that we have, to see which one you might like. And you might not like any of them. In fact, they might not do anything, but feel free to kind of be curious about it, see what they do. So I'll just keep them at Euclidean. I can't spell that. But anyways, so that's what it looks like, and that's pretty good so far, but we can make it a little bit better. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to come to the back again, and since this establishes the overall shape, not overall shape, but the size and detail, major detail of the texture, I'm going to go ahead and add another texture to add tinier detail onto these parts right here. So I'm going to press Shift A, texture, noise texture. I'll just bring it down here. Bring the vector into its own vector right here for texture. And I'm going to add a mix RGB. So I'm going to go to color, mix RGB, bring it up here, and change the mix to, let me zoom in real quick, to linear light. There we go. And we don't need that much, so I'll bring it down to 0.2. The color will go into the bottom. There we go. And then the vector of the mapping will go into the first color. And now with that done, I'm going to plug this into the vector of both pieces. And as you can see, now we have that same shape that we had, but we're adding noise texture to the overall look of it. So we're just adding more detail. Now, we can basically kind of leave it around there. I think that looks pretty good. Now we can just kind of tweak it to what we want. Maybe something like this would be good. And we can even change the scaling of some of these other pieces. Like the scaling, I can bring it down to, let's say 0.4. And the rest I'll leave, but the distortion, let me see what this looks like. This looks nice, but I don't want to bring it too up, because if I do, it starts to look a little bit like sand or something kind of psychedelic. So I'll leave it to something like, let's say 0.2. There we go. And that looks pretty good. It's just a little bit of distortion to kind of make it pop out a little bit more. Let's see what the value of this is. Let's change this to, I'll say 0.4. And that looks pretty good. Everything else here looks nice. I might just bring this in a little bit more to tighten the look of it. And let's increase the strength of the emission to 100. So not too bad. That's pretty good. You can kind of see detail on the inner part of the texture, and then the outer part has a nice blue to it. So, with that done, let's move on to making the middle part. So I'm going to copy this texture right here, or this texture, this sphere, right there, right click, and then scale in to around there. Let me bring in the rotate tool and rotate. Let's say around there. That should be good. And then I don't need the rotate tool anymore, so there we go. And what we're going to do from here is make a new texture. But before we begin, I want to add a little bit of, just a little bit more detail to the model itself, because it is a sphere, but it's very simple. What I'm going to do is go to Add Modifier and add Subdivision Surface. I'll bring this up to, well, let's say 3 for now, and then add a displacement. So for displacement, what we're going to do is make a new texture, but not in the sense of a material. This is actually a texture, as in a 2D flat image. So here we have the texture we just made, and the type is going to be a cloud. So already you can see the highlight, or the highlight of the selection. It's a little crazy. What we're going to do is lower the strength until it's something a little less crazy. I think something like that works. And from here, we'll just add a smooth modifier and increase the repetition to 10. So there we are. And with this one, what we'll do is we'll actually kind of work with a already made texture, which is the outer texture of the Hadouken. So to do that, we're going to go over to this number right next to the texture and click on it. So what this does is it makes a single version instead of a shared texture. So now we have a 0.001 of that material. What I'm going to do is rename this to middle, and then remove the naming convention. There we are. And I'll do the same over here. Middle, and there we are. So with this, I'm going to just change a few things here and there. Primarily the values and major details of the texture. So let's go over here to the value. And let's take a look what we got here. No, it's not bad, but I think we add a bit more room for the texture itself to kind of cover the area. We wanted it to look a little bit more solid, but not entirely closed sphere like the inside of the Hadouken looks. So let's just go ahead. You know what? Let's hide this outer texture so we can focus on the inside. And that actually already looks pretty good. So all I did was just kind of change the linear lighting factor. So let's put it to, let's say 0.3. The values stayed the same for the Voronoi texture and pretty much everything else did. If we want, we can switch this to 0.2 for the value of the mapping. And then I just kind of switched the area of the color ramp so that's a little bit more sharp, like so. And already that looks pretty good. So I'll bring back the outer Hadouken. And what we'll do with the inner Hadouken, making sure it's still selected. There we see. I'm going to increase the strength to 150. Just so that it looks a little bit more brighter than the outer edge of the Hadouken. I'll bring the color to something a little bit more darker. And lower the value to 0.8. It should be fine. And we'll go back to the outer Hadouken and just take a look at it really quick. I think we can lower the emission to something like 0.9 or 90, not 0.9. And I think that looks pretty good. So that's a pretty good Hadouken there. I think what we can start doing now is taking a look at making the rest of the area. But first, let me just add a little bit more value. Let's bring this to 0.5 or 1.5, excuse me. Let's just leave the scaling there for now. All right, so I think this is good. If we really want to kind of fix anything, you can later, feel free, but I think that's fine. So from here, we'll move on to making kind of electricity going around the palms and then adding a wind effect. So let's go ahead and add the electricity kind of going around the hands. To do that, what we're going to do is make another shader, but also another material. Sorry, not material, mesh. So let's go over here into the viewport and go to add metaball ball. So it might not seem like much, but this metaball and what we can do with it is that we can kind of make duplicates and bring them around. And if they get close enough, they can merge with one another. And this will work pretty well for the lightning, as we can make it look like a chain of lightning, as if it's kind of following a path or it's just more or less connected. So this will be a good example to work with for now. So let's make a new material, and let's call this electricity. All right, so this texture is going to look pretty similar to the Hadouken in that we're going to use the same kind of method of adding shaders. Oh, not holdout. Shader, mix shader. There we go. Add a transparent. Add a... Where is it? Oh, there we go. Add a emission. And then add Voronoi textures. So there we go. And I'm going to make a duplicate. And change this to 4D. And we'll keep the bottom one 3D for now. If we want to change it to 4D, we'll do it. But let's just see how this looks like for now. Oh, and let's change the emission to a nice deep blue. Or actually a light blue. Change the strength to 50 for now. And let's go ahead and add a math node. Again, we'll use subtract. There we go. Oh, let's bring that there. Awesome. So we're already getting a good idea of what this looks like. Now we just kind of need to fix a few things. We need to make the blend mode to alpha blend. And there we go. And then we also need to add values for the W and scale. Since we kind of did that last time, and so we can kind of do that now. I'm going to go to input, value, and just bring these two right there. This one will go to W, and this one will go to... Oh, there's no W there. Okay, never mind. I don't know why I thought that had W. So I'll just delete this really quick. And we'll just affect the W where it is. Let's bring the scale to 0.6. Now let's bring it to 1. Leave it there as it is. So that looks pretty good. And then from here, we'll add a texture coordinate, like how we had before. Bring the object to the mapping, like so. And then we'll just make the same kind of value, just so we can keep it consistent. Like so. And then we'll go ahead and add a color ramp like we did the last time. So go to converter, color ramp. And then we'll bring this a little bit forward, and then the white one much more forward. And let's increase the strength of this to something like 100. That actually looks pretty good. There we go. And let's make this a little bit more deeper blue. Actually, no, let's make it a deeper blue. There we go. And let's bring this value something like 1.2. I'm bringing the value of the mapping to around 0.6, and we'll leave it there for now. I'm going to switch some of the texture details to see if we get anything good. All right, so that didn't work. Smooth F1. It's not bad, but you need it to look like lightning, so it needs to be sharp and kind of angled like that. See if that works. Nope. Smooth F1. It's not bad. We need to see what this does. It's not bad. We don't really need to do anything with the W. But I like the look of this now. It looks kind of crackly, like lightning. Alright, so I'm just changing a few of the randomness for the Voronoi texture. And I think that about covers the lightning texture. Let me just increase the strength a little bit more. I think 110 is pretty good. So, now this, what I can do is move these around and see how they're dependent on each other. That lets me kind of work with it and kind of adjust what I need to adjust to make it look like it's in space when it doesn't necessarily have to be. I can move this a little bit more forward, and I can make it look like it's part of the texture without having to make it too unique. There we go. And I'm just going to keep adding the same texture around until I get a nice look for this electricity. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. We just need to fix the textures a little bit now. Let's go ahead and switch these around. All right, that's not bad, but we can do a little bit better. And I think I know how we can. We just need to tighten this up a little bit more. All right, that's actually pretty good. In fact, I kind of want to add more of this electricity around the Hadouken. And then a little bit in front of the hand. There we go. All right, so I think that looks pretty good. Let me turn on the toggle for right there. All right. I think that about covers the detail for the Hadouken electricity. And if you want, again, if it looks like it's too much, go ahead and just clear up the detail. Right around there. There we go. Don't mind me, I'm literally just kind of going around, just tweaking everything to see if something looks nice, something doesn't. All right, so I think with that, we're pretty good. I just want to go ahead and move some of these things around. All right. So that about covers this section. And then in the next section, I'll just show you guys how to make the wind texture and also how to make your renderer look good. And we'll kind of go over that. So I'll see you guys in the next video.